What is up, everybody? Justin with the Road Alaska Podcast, your host, and my new trusty sidekick, co-host,
Billy.
And we are here with Karen Ciocchi with Plan B Capital. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Plan B Capital, I'm sure people are kind of like, do you do stocks, investments? Like, you know, what does Plan B Capital mean? So do you kind of want to give our listeners like brief like synopsis of kind of what you do?
Sure. Plan B Capital connects businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, with the money they need when the bank says no.
Got it.
So it's alternative financing.
Okay. Alternative, creative. Well, how would you both?
Well, technically, alternative financing is any kind of financing that is not part of a traditional brick and mortar bank.
Okay.
I really don't think alternative is really the right name because alternative came first. If you've given $20 to your kid to go run a lemonade stand down at the end of your driveway, guess what? You're an alternative lender.
Right.
That's what it is. So if
I
you
knew I had a niche.
Yeah. So alternative lending has been around as long as money has been. So it really got a big boost in the credit crunch of 2008.
Okay.
When the banks basically stopped lending to everybody.
Right. They just
for a
kinda
period of
pulled
time.
way back. I wonder why.
Yep. So businesses needed someplace to go. And the alternative space, the alternative lending space, really got a huge shot in the arm growth-wise for that. So now there's thousands. You can go out on the web and do all kinds of, and there's TechFin, technical financing, the lending trees, and that kind of stuff. So there's a whole bunch of different places to go. What makes Plan B unique, number one, is I don't lend money. I'm just the matchmaker. So I have a list of about a couple of dozen lenders that all lend in different kinds of spaces. And some of them, most of them specialize in either particular kinds of businesses. For example, I've got lenders that love restaurants. I have others that won't touch restaurants. So my job when people come to me is to, I learn a little bit about their business, how much they need, what their needs are, and then match that up to my catalog of lenders. And all these lenders have been in business for years. They're all vetted. They're not squirrely. Like I say, you can go out to the web, but then you've got a whole lot of shopping and vetting that you need to figure out who to go to. Yeah,
Google's a pretty wide world out there. So
you can get all kinds of people.
You can get deep in the weeds pretty quick with Google.
You don't know where to start. As soon as you put something in, you get a ton of return. You don't have any idea who's vetted, who's not.
Right. Yeah. It can be pretty scary. And a lot of businesses, they're not good at financing. They're good at whatever their business is. And so this is asking them to really put on a hat that's alien territory to most of them. So they need a guide. So that's kind of the role that Plan B Capital plays. I've got two unique things, though. Number one, I'm here, and most everybody is in the lower 48, although all of my lenders are in the lower 48, which is unfortunate. One of my secret passions is there's so much money in Alaska. We should have lenders here. We should. So that's kind of on my someday maybe to-do list is to see about talking to people who can put funds together. And there is money here. I encounter a whole lot of people that say, oh yeah, Joe Schmo with, XYZ funding does that. And I check all these leads out, and so far none of them do what I do.
Right.
Most of the people that I've researched, they're equity lenders. They're not debt.
Right.
So that's one of the things that makes me really unique in the state is I'm really the only place, particularly for startups.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to get startup money. Well, it's impossible from a bank. Most banks won't even
touch a startup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 or 3 different lenders that offer pure zero rev. You've got a business with zero revenue. You haven't even opened your doors yet. That have money that I can get people.
Well, that's a significant barrier to entry for a lot of people, right? Is having that initial startup, and if they have no history, if it's a new business, that makes it pretty difficult.
Yep.
Yeah.
Particularly, I have one lender that specializes in helping truckers because I understand to buy an 18-wheeler like off the Peterbilt lot, you have to already have owned one. So if you're trying to break in,
makes it a little challenging.
yeah, it's tough. So
Yeah.
I've got a lender that will work with those guys so they can get into their first truck
Yeah.
and get going and start building credit in that space and all the rest of that
Right.
stuff.
I did not know that about Peterbilt trucks that you had to have.
It's
Not just Peterbilts; it's any kind of big rig.
Yeah. It's kind of funky. There's like, when it comes to lending and banks, they have these barriers in place. A lot of them.
Oh, they're
sometimes.
called regulations.
Well, I get that, I'm sure they're there for a reason at some point or another, just like there's a reason why there's directions on soap bars, right? Because someone at some point,
Somebody tried to eat it. And
Yeah,
got a lawsuit.
so when it comes, banks obviously do quite a bit of financing for, standard stuff, right?
big guys.
The big guys, right? Which is understandable. When it comes to specialty financing, what are some of the businesses that would not be funded by a bank that you guys like? That's your niche.
I have a couple lenders where there is no redlining. They'll
Yeah.
take anybody. They'll take cannabis. They'll take gun shops. Nonprofits are another one that's very difficult to get lending on. Nonprofits, churches, religious organizations, those kind of things. So there is way to get money, but you've got to go into the alternative space to do it.
Yeah. I can see, especially the cash only businesses or
Heck,
obviously-
sometimes restaurants.
Yeah.
I don't think banks are terribly eager in this time to lend to certainly a startup restaurant or a restaurant that hasn't been around for a while.
Right.
Right, they have a significant labor cost.
Well, that and after, during COVID, obviously, how many restaurants closed?
Right.
Just in Anchorage.
So the stats aren't
So,
really stacked up in your favor.
No.
I
no.
used to be a heavy restaurant patron. There were
Right.
days when all 3 meals per day were in a restaurant because I was going from place to place. So I got pretty familiar with the restaurant space in town.
Right.
And it breaks my heart. Some of my favorite restaurants, and you don't know. Like when I get a prospect that calls me and say, "Hey, let's meet for coffee somewhere," it's like I'm almost hesitant to say, "Well, let's go to X," because I'm not quite sure that X is still there.
Right.
Doriola's, as a matter of fact, was one of my favorite places, and it just disappeared. And I still miss her. I hope she's doing catering or something at this juncture. But yeah, the restaurant space is. And I have a lender that absolutely specializes in that space.
Right.
Brick and mortar restaurants, not so much food trucks and mobile stuff, but the
Yeah.
brick and mortar restaurants. Yeah,
What would you
I can
think
get money
about
for that.
like a for rent kitchen? So like if you just had like a commercial kitchen that you wanted to like rent out to people, say in like food trucks or other people that may have barriers for those, right? So I know that that's a sticking point for some folks because they can't prepare the food in the trucks.
I know. I actually joined a Facebook group last night, the name of which the Alaska Independent Workers Alliance, I think. It's for like gig workers and things like that. It's associated with the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
It's one of their subgroups. And the question they asked was, what one thing would you like to see in the business environment in Anchorage would you like to see changed? And so I pasted in the quote from last year. This was 2001, a national survey where Alaska landed in last place for the least friendliest business environment in all 50 states. Alaska's at the bottom.
I can understand that.
And they looked at, the typical categories, taxation, regulation, all that stuff. But I had a personal chef for a while, and she had to bring all of the food and everything to my house and cook it in my kitchen because of regulations.
Yeah.
She could not cook it in her kitchen, which was spotless. She could have eaten off the floor. It was 10
Right.
times more clean than my kitchen is.
Right.
And that was a huge barrier for her. It really prevented her from growing. And it's these silly regulations. I have no idea where they came from or how to get rid of them or whatever. But yeah, Alaska is a very difficult place now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been told that quite a few times. I got friends who own food trucks, and they're just like, man, it's the Muni has such a big bone to pick with food trucks. It's almost next to impossible to even open one. You know, they have to go through all the same standards as opening.
Well,
like
the
a
brick and mortar restaurants,
you know, like all
are
of that.
complaining because
Yeah.
all of a sudden you have a taco truck outside of your brick and mortar, $200,000 establishment. He's taking all your customers. So I can see where that would be a balancing act.
Right.
Right. And I do love those taco trucks.
Yeah, roach coaches, man, they're awesome. I shouldn't say that, because I doubt they have any roaches, but
No, I don't think they do.
Although some of the brick and mortars do. So
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
those ones do.
yeah. I've been in some of the kitchens as a fireman, man. Some of them are nasty.
Not all of them. That's
No.
a disclaimer. We're not
Yeah,
speaking
yeah,
in
yeah,
no. Your lower end ones. The ones you would probably suspect of having a gross kitchen probably are the ones with the gross kitchen. So, well, I mean, did you grow up here? What's the history? Like how did Plan B Capital come to existence?
Well, I was born a military brat, so I grew up.
okay.
I moved around a lot. I was to Europe and back before I started first grade.
Nice.
My parents tell me that I learned to speak German before English, but that I lost all that. Although I still think it's in there somewhere. I need to take a German class.
Yeah.
Because I think it's still rattling around the back of my head somewhere. So we came back stateside. I started first grade in Texas, did grades 1 through 3. He transferred to Massachusetts. I did 4 and 5 there. And then Dad retired to Arizona. My brother, who's my big brother, wanted to go to engineering college at Arizona State University in Tempe. So that's where we went. So that's where I finished school. I was there about 25 years. And then I moved up here.
Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, some interesting things. My dad was a mechanic, raised a family. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. So obviously I'm a boomer. I was born in the 50s, graduated high school in the 70s. So I'm kind of got that boomer work ethic. It was instilled by, my dad came over from the old country,
Yeah.
immigrant, that kind of stuff. So he installed in his kids a work ethic. You show up and you do excellent work.
Right.
Excellence was always kind of the byword.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So came to Alaska. What were you doing when you came to Alaska? I mean, not Plan B Capital.
No, that's
I think I remember a story like you were an investor, and yeah, I mean, you had a really cool investor story.
oh, well, yeah,
Like
I
your
do
whole
have.
world of investing.
I do have a few stories. That's true. Well, I got started in, I guess when I was about 25 or 26, I read the first of a couple books that changed my life. It's called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" It's the first. There's 1,000 books of them like now about how to plan your career. What are you good at? Figure
Right.
that out.
Right.
So, but that one was the first one. That's kind of been the Bible of life work planning things. And it taught me to break down what I was good at, my skills, into something that I could build jobs out of.
Right.
So I learned pretty quickly that I was really good at data manipulation, which up until that point I had no idea that I would be. Well, there weren't really any computers. Computers came out. The IBM PC came out in 1981. The Macintosh came out in 1984.
Right.
So that's just about in that period is when I thought, oh, this is cool. And the nice thing about it was I did go to school. I learned programming, Fortran, COBOL, all of that stuff, and then couldn't get a job in it because it wasn't a 4-year degree. I went to a
Right.
tech college. And I remember a recruiter telling me, you forget all those little things. They're just toys. You need to learn how to program the big iron in the basement. That's what he called
Right.
it.
The big iron in the basement.
The big iron in the basement. That's what they
Oh,
call
times
it.
have changed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now
yeah.
your iPhone can do more computing than
Yeah, it's
those
okay.
things.
Oh,
in the
for
basement.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So what I loved about it was called microcomputing back then. We call it PCs now. It was a level playing field. So it didn't matter. The guy who was sitting next to me, who had a 4-year degree, a CIOS degree, and 10 years experience in COBOL, I was equal to him because we were all learning this all at the same time. So it was one of those societal, industrial revolutions that came through, and it just kind of leveled the playing field for everybody. So I started doing freelance consulting because I wanted to learn everything. I happened to be I joined a user group because that's what happened back then. You had these clubs that would meet in the library, once a month. And my town happened to have a huge Motorola semi manufacturing plant. So we had all these engineers. So I'd come along and say, well, why do I have to format a disk? What does formatting do? Or, what's memory? I learned hex, all of those things, just kind of being interested and just being a sponge and just absorbing it all. And of course, there were people coming along behind me that were asking questions that I could answer. So I kind of morphed into the just the training and the rest of it. That got me involved in word processing because I had a lot of strong typing skills. My first my first business, I'm kind of a serial engineer, entrepreneur. So my first business was a secretarial service. So I was typing, whatever people needed. And this is the early days of word processing.
People had no idea.
Yeah.
People didn't have home computers.
Nope.
So
this is before the Apple II. This is like Apple I territory.
Yeah.
This is like way back.
Yeah.
It's interesting all the changes that took place, right? Because like the Apple II came out, and like that was, they had them in schools. We were doing like the Super Mario Brothers typing game. They were like, you better learn this, and you're not going to be able to look at the keyboard.
Yeah.
And I don't think we realized the impact of those technologies, right?
Yep.
Going to school in the early '90s when all that stuff was being implemented, like computer skills were a game changer.
Yeah.
And like you said, that was a level playing field. Everyone started over from the beginning.
Yep. Yeah, it was the Wild West. It was really an exciting time. So word processing got me into databases, and so then I started to do database consulting. Back then, the database that ruled the world was called DBase, DBase 2. And then I moved up here and went to work. My other track, my first job out of high school was at a mortgage company. So I learned the mortgage business like right
Early
off the bat.
on, yeah.
Started in what I call the front end of the business, which is the loan origination. I was typing, mind you, mortgages and
Like the
promissory
old
notes. Yep. With carbon paper.
Oh.
no.
Yeah. I was actually looking for something last night and came across, I still have a secret stash of some carbon paper left.
There's probably some viewers who are listening who have no idea what that is.
No idea what that was.
We'll put a description link down below.
Yeah, really.
To a Google image. Like, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah. So then the real estate kind of died down, and so they laid off half of the front end of the business, but they also service loans. So it was a back end of the business too. And so somebody said, would you like to learn more? I went, yeah, that all looks cool. And that accidental comment in the coffee room over coffee with one of the supervisors saved me off of the mass layoffs, and they transferred me to the back of the house. So then I got to learn not just collections, but foreclosures, insurance snarls. So we had a horrible problem where somebody fell over a switch somewhere with the computer system, and all the taxes for every property that we had a mortgage on in Maricopa County, the county that Phoenix is in, got paid out of one guy's escrow account.
Oh, geez.
Ouch.
Whoops.
So, yeah. So nobody caught it.
Wait, did that check bounce though? Dang.
No, well, we paid it as a mortgage company. Then you collect it from all the borrowers. So nobody caught it. It went out the door. The computer said, "Oh, this man has a shortage in his escrow account." So what do you do when you have shortages in your impound account? You divide it by 12 and spread it out and add that to his payment. So then his payment coupons got printed and sent, and nobody caught that. The first we knew about it was the phone
When he
call
called.
from the mortgage from the homeowner that says, "I think there's been some problem here," because his house payment was like, I don't know, $25,000 a month or some ridiculous number like that.
Can you imagine? I'm not sure if this is right.
I'm pretty sure he was actually pretty cool about it. He said, "I'm pretty sure there's been some mistake," and it's like, yeah. So anyway, I was the troubleshooter. I got to go down to the assessor's office and pull all the tax bills and untangle it and all of that. So
That sounds wonderful.
it was one of my best jobs ever. Yep. Yeah.
I'm all like, this sounds wonderful. Cameron's like, yes, it was.
It's complicated. Yeah.
Matter of fact, that was fantastic. I'm like, that does not
Oh,
sound great.
it's a puzzle. You got to figure
Right.
out what happened and then how to undo it, and then how the third step, which a lot of people leave out, is how to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right,
Put
yeah.
some kind of preventative measures
Right.
in. So, yeah, the kind of the troubleshooter, just trying to think your way through a problem. It's been kind of a theme.
So how do we go from all of that, to,
in Arizona to this.
to this?
Well, in the summer of '85, I was still in Arizona. I went to the library and pulled an Anchorage phone book and started calling temporary services up here to see if I could get a job. Well, in the summer of '85, everybody said, oh my God, don't come. If you don't have a job, don't come. Because people were getting stranded up here because
Yeah.
they couldn't find work.
Right.
So I waited a year. The summer of '86, I did the same thing. I got the same story. The summer of '87, I called and they said, yeah, I think we can put you to work. I went, hot damn. Hung up the phone, put all the clothes I could fit in 3 suitcases, got a round trip ticket, rent a car, and a dive of a hotel, and flew up. So I arrived on a Thursday, checked in the hotel, got the rent a car. Friday morning, I go to Kelly Services right down the street. And at that point, I had a lot of database experience and a lot of mortgage and and more to the point, foreclosure experience. And the summer of '87 in Anchorage was one hop in place when it comes to foreclosures. So what happened was I was sitting at the desk, they were doing my intake and typing tests and all that stuff. And the branch manager happened to walk past me, behind me. She skidded to a stop. She came back. She says, wait, do you know databases? I went, yeah. She says, and you've got foreclosure experience? I went, yeah. She says, come with me. So I didn't actually get to finish filling out all my papers before I was reporting to work at United Bank Alaska, just actually right next to City Hall on G Street. The wall that has the mural on it?
Yeah.
That was my first stop.
Wow.
Yep.
Cool.
And it was crazy town. It was
yeah.
crazy town.
Yeah. Alaska in the late 80s was a little challenging.
They had, what had happened was they had one guy that was keeping track of all the foreclosed properties. And he didn't know databases, so he was using a spreadsheet. Back then it was Lotus 123.
Right.
So he went in and asked for a raise because, this is a tidal wave of properties. And they said, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So he walked out, and nobody else knew how to run Lotus.
Well, that was a mistake.
Yeah. So they were totally desperate for somebody. So I came in, ported it out of spreadsheets into a database so that they could at least, because they didn't even know how many properties they had.
Oh.
It was absolute nightmare. The board meetings were just, I understand, quite interesting.
I bet.
So they had like 3,000 lots. They had they had vacant lots. They had partially lots with like a foundation, but nothing else. We had properties that were in violation of codes, and the muni was saying, "Well, you're the owner now, so you're gonna fix this." I worked for the in the commercial department, so I can drive through town. There's a number of buildings. Well, the H2 Oasis, we had that repoed when it was what was it? The Castle on O'Malley.
Castle on O'Malley. Yeah.
And REO managers hate special use buildings like that because you
Yeah.
can't. You gotta wait.
How do you offload them?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, what else are you going to do
Yep.
with it, right?
Right. Yeah. So okay. So did foreclosures with the bank, which is no longer around.
Yeah, I got to see how broke banks fail from the inside. That was a very
Well, that was a strong learning point for you.
that was
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, so eventually, and the minute I stepped in the door, I started doing technical support because nobody else knew. So people would come to me and say, "Hey, Karen, I can't get the margins to work out of my Word document. What do I
Right.
do? Hey, Karen, my spreadsheet's giving me wrong answers. I have no idea why."
Yeah.
So I just naturally figured things out. And actually, the name Plan B came from up here. I kept threatening. I finally told somebody, I said, the next business I start, I'm going to call it Plan B because people, they get stuck in computers. They only know one way to do things.
Right.
And there's at least 3 different ways to do everything
Yep.
You're right about that.
in the computer world. So you just have to you have to have that plan B so that you know how to do that. So that's kind of where the name originally came from. And I've been known as the Plan B gal ever since. This is back from the 80s, so it's been a while.
Okay. Well, when did Plan B officially start?
It started out as a sole proprietorship. I incorporated back when I was actually doing freelance database work. So after all the banks folded, I got sucked out of the state for a year. My girlfriend was living in Boston and losing her roommate. And if she lost her roommate, she was going to lose her nice high-rise condo in downtown. So I did that for a year. Went to work for the Boston Stock Exchange. So that was fun. Learned how the floor of an exchange works.
I'm sure that's exciting.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Only so many hours a day.
Yeah, it could be. And so eventually I ended up with I was the only freelance database programmer using a particular language called Paradox at the time. So I did that for several years and ended up having to close that. I had a health issue that meant no more programming. So from there, I just basically segued into being a business analyst. Had to go back to work for the man, so I had to go back to like corporate America. That led to me getting sucked out of the state for the second time. I actually went to work in Silicon Valley for Sun Microsystems. If you guys heard about Sun. Sun was very prominent back then.
Yeah.
And got to see the inside. I got laid off the week after 9/11, so I was in Silicon Valley when that happened. And the bubble had already burst. The tech bubble had already burst. We didn't realize it like that summer, like in June.
Right.
So I was working with people who had literally $1 million in their 401k, but it was 100% invested in Sun.
Right.
And Sun eventually
Liquidated.
went to zero.
Yeah.
So they lost everything.
Man, that would suck.
Yeah, it was very, very, very ugly. Oh, rolling blackouts were going on down there, so I got
scary times.
Got to do all of that.
100%.
But I came back because Alaska is just totally unique.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I've traveled around a lot. Now I've worked in 4 different states. It's magical here.
Yeah.
I just wish it was easier to do business here.
Yeah, it's funny because I've had this conversation multiple times on these podcasts about kind of like the regulation aspect of the city, right? And they make it very challenging for business owners in Alaska, in Anchorage specifically.
And I don't think it's not small business either because they're anti-oil big business. So just the whole general government attitude toward business in general, big, medium, or small, is we're really taken for granted that we'll always be here. There's always another tax that you can slap on somebody.
Yeah.
I got active politically when they started taxing the pictures on your wall. You have to pay tax on that every year, and your table and the amount of copy paper you've got in your closet. There's a tax. Now they eventually exempted like the first $20,000 of
Right.
it or whatever.
Yeah.
That's why you're looking at me so puzzled. You're going, we don't pay that. But back when they first passed it,
Yeah.
it was everything. I had to go through and count every sheet of paper, every pencil, and the computer, not mentioning, the computers the chair I was sitting on.
Right.
It was absolutely insane.
That's insane. Like, yeah. I mean, you put so much burden on a business owner just to file what your assets are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What a pain in the butt. And, it's we could be like a really cool mecca for remote work up here.
Oh yeah.
True. Right? Think about the access to lifestyle that you could have, and we have good internet.
Yeah. Well, they're running 3 fiber optic lines between Japan and the United States right now through Alaska.
Right.
I mean, so the fiber network we have is pretty impeccable. We've got 2 that go from Washington up to here already, right? So now 3 attaches us to Japan. And
Starlink, don't forget that.
And Starlink. So
I would argue this is a really good environment for tech business, right? Just because, one, power is cheap, right?
Yep.
It's cool for most of the year, right? And then from what I understand, a lot of those tech companies, a lot of their overhead is cooling,
right.
right?
Well, I mean, just to our lifestyle is good. Right. You know, like people who want to be outdoorsy and can work remote, like this would be
hikers and people like that. People that love skiing, you know.
Yeah, people that work remote, do their own stuff, you know, gig workers, right? I mean, we could be a mecca for gig workers that work on technology, right? In the tech space.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you know, we have got multiple governments that just don't see that. And they
either that or you have to live in Delta. You got to get so far out there.
Right. I mean, who knows? Like, but you know, even the AEDC has mentioned like that we could be a tech place. You know, for people who want that lifestyle change, who like the outdoor lifestyle. You know, we just have to push it. But you know, getting politicians on that page and to agree on anything.
People are moving that way too, right? Like, people are tending to be more fit. They're getting outside more, right? We're seeing those changes in culture. You know, since COVID, people are getting out. They're paying more attention to their health, what they're eating.
One of the big stumbling blocks, though, is you really need a solid university underfitting that. And I've taught for the university. I've had a couple of jobs with them. It's pretty sad. We have a pretty sad university system. But on the other side, we've got so much remote university systems. I mean, you could go to MIT now totally and get a 4-year degree and never leave Alaska.
Yeah.
So, but what I've heard ADA and the SPDC and all those guys talk about is that we really need a university system that's pumping out people with technical degrees, and we just don't have that.
Yeah. If anything, they pulled back.
Yeah.
In the last few years.
Well, they have, right? Because their funding has been cut and their programs are being more and more reduced. And what's interesting about that, you know, you made a good point, is that's really our only source of qualified or skilled labor, if you will, right? So what happens is there's an employee shortage for skilled labor, and we end up pulling that from out of state. Well, these people don't live in the state necessarily. They maintain a home of record and wherever, and they're paying taxes for there, and the money that they're making
goes out. Yeah. I mean, think of all the oil workers that fly up and
then think of all the kids that
leave
for college and go and get jobs in other cities in those states and never come back.
Yeah.
Right. So you're seeing all that age of people. They have more incentive to go other places.
Yep. Yep. I think the political environment in Alaska has to realize that they're in competition with 49 other states.
Right.
Right. And as beautiful as Alaska is.
Yep.
You know.
Well, we do have an interesting source of talent that a lot of other states don't, and that's our military bases. So people come up here and they go, wow, I want to retire here. So we do kind of get them kind of through the back door kind of thing. Not like a university system, but yeah, that's very true.
Well, as far as like, you know, as we're talking about this and with the Plan B stuff, you know, where can you help, like, with business growth?
2 places.
Okay.
First place is with startups because there's such a need. Like I say, as far as I know, I'm the only person in the state who is doing this. I've not come across anybody, and I've looked pretty hard. Startups, but part of the problem, one of the biggest frustrations I have is people come to me and they don't know what they want.
Right.
So financial literacy is really critical, I think. So I end up doing a lot of education.
Right.
A lot of people, or particularly a lot of startups that come to me, it's like, you're not ready to talk to me yet. You still need to get... No, I've had people that come to me and don't know what business they want to be in. And it's like, well, you need a little bit more than that before you want to borrow $80,000 for an idea. But I think that's simply because they just don't know how the game is playing. They don't realize it. So a couple of things is you need to pay your bills on time. And what I recommend to people is if you're thinking about going into business, or even if you're in business right now, but you're not borrowing, a day is going to come when you're going to want to borrow somewhere, somehow. And so you need to start thinking about that now. And the easiest place to start is start paying every bill you have, I don't care how minor it is, 1 week early.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
because derogatories on your credit, most of the alternative lenders, they may not look at what your business revenue is, but they are definitely going to look at your FICO scores. So you've got to really pay attention to your FICO scores. So one of my first questions is I'll ask people, what's your FICO score? Nobody knows.
Right.
I get people who give me a number and it turns out that it's way low. The truth of the matter is it's way low. Oh yeah, I got great credit, and you pull it in there in the 500s, right? And it's like this is going to be a problem. But so I would say if you've got bad credit, then number one, you need to start working on improving that. But if you need money now, you need to get a cosigner who has good credit.
Right.
So a lot of my startup programs welcome cosigners. It's not a bad thing. They're like 80% of their loan portfolio is through cosigners.
Nice.
So it's not so there is a way, and this goes for the truckers, the truckers as well. There is a path, but obviously the easiest path is for you to be able to get your loan on your own.
Right. Financial literacy.
Yep.
Understanding your credit.
Yep.
Yep.
So I have 2 affiliate programs that I added on when it became obvious that people needed help in this area. So people can go to my website and learn about how to pull how to get your credit report pulled. I have a service. It only costs $1, right? So it's not a huge amount of money. It's part of credit monitoring. So I tell people, if you're thinking about borrowing, you need to get on a good credit monitoring service beforehand, so that number one, you pull your credit and you find out what's there.
Right.
And if there's problems, then the other service I offer is credit repair. Again, there's 1,000 credit repair companies out there. It's hard to tell good
What's
from
good.
bad. So I've got a good one. I personally went through it. I know they know what they're doing, and they're super duper fast. They can go through. They do multiple sweeps, but they can finish their first pass within 30 days. So
That is pretty quick.
it's actually for most credit repairs, it's months, and you'll lose a deal waiting for your buyer to do all that.
Of course.
So credit monitoring, get your credit report, get credit monitoring in place, and credit repair if necessary, and start paying all your bills 1 week early, every single one.
Right. I mean, you're right. I don't think people look often.
Yeah.
I look a couple times a month.
year?
Yeah, a couple times a month probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just curious to know because I plan to borrow in the next year, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I need to be watching this.
Yeah.
Make sure this
Now is the time. A lot of people are relying on things like Credit Karma on their phone, and I know some of the banks. You have to be careful because those things use Vantage as a scoring system, but the lenders all look at FICO, which is a completely different algorithm. They come up with different numbers. I've had people, within the last month, I had somebody that said their Vantage score was like 720, which is like, I'm thinking, you're golden. That's based almost a certainty to get through. We ran his FICO score, and he was like in the low sixes, like 620. And it was like,
100 points off?
100 points off.
Wow.
Big variance.
Yeah. So that deal fell apart simply because he didn't have a handle on his credit report, on his credit scores, and he was looking at the wrong score. So make sure it's FICO.
Yeah.
And start working on it now. So a year out is pretty good. It's pretty good. So learn that. The other thing is you just got to pay attention to the details. It's definitely, and you need to have money.
Right.
The easiest problems, this is a proverb I heard years ago in the business world, the easiest business problems in the world to solve are the ones where all you have to do is write a check.
Right.
So the more money you have, the longer you can survive your mistakes. That's really what business is all about. You have to be able to survive your mistakes. And every mistake, by definition, costs money.
Right.
So the more money you have going in, I get a lot of people who start on a shoestring. And I've probably done half a dozen businesses, before I landed here.
Yeah.
And they all had to be bootstrapped from ground zero. So they had to earn the money that I would plow back into it.
Right.
And that's a terrible way. Your odds of succeeding are like minuscule when you do that.
Right. That's what holds people back in real estate too.
Yep. So you should have two things. You either have to have the nest egg 6 to 10 months, this is kind of the usual statistic. But I couldn't do that. So the way I did it was, or you can just take a second job. So are you willing to, deliver pizzas at night, or,
Right.
whatever it takes. So one of my questions is, what will it take to stop you? If you want a business, what's it going to take to stop you?
Right.
And, most people go, well, it's not, I'm just going to muscle my way through it.
Right.
Well, it's easy to say when you're comfortable and your lights are on and, you don't have somebody threatening to repo your car.
Right.
It's a whole different story when that is the situation.
Yeah.
I did want to say one thing, though, about business failures. I looked up the General Bureau of Labor Statistics on business failures. And it's like by the end of the first year, 20% have failed. By the end of the second year, it's 30%. By the end of the fifth year, 50% of all businesses have gone under. And in 10 years, 70% are gone. So that's national average.
Yeah.
And,
What do you think that is? What do you think the correlation is on that?
Well, I think for the first year, I think most of those people were not prepared.
Right.
They didn't have money. They didn't really know what they were doing.
Yeah.
I noticed in previous podcasts with with Sugar Babes and with Alaska Premier Auction, those guys, they went to school. They went to class. They learned the job. They just didn't
Right.
wing it. They got
Right.
certified. They did all that, and they did all that before they actually launched.
Right.
Which is the way it should go. So they did their homework. They knew what they were getting into, and they were prepared. But a lot of these guys, they just they don't give a lot of thought. And I realize that there's personalities that hate planning. You're in whatever, and then there are others like plan everything,
Right.
lists and all that. And usually they're married to each other. Is
Right.
usually what happens.
Right, you got to have a mix of the two.
Yeah, yeah.
100%. I feel that.
Yeah, but so if you're more of the spontaneous personality type,
Right.
you've got to really think hard about being an entrepreneur because there's stuff you're gonna have to plan for.
Right.
You were going to ask me about my 5 things, so I have that. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit.
Okay.
But the 5 things are
Yeah, for those listening, towards the end of every podcast, we always ask a guest the top 5 things you would give like a new business owner or young entrepreneur. Like 5 life lessons that you've learned being in business and what those things are.
Yep.
So
Yep.
obviously, Karen, you came prepared.
I am
Man, look at that.
prepared.
You've got a
Yep,
sheet
yep.
and everything.
Those
So-
are tough questions.
Those are tough questions.
I have 5 subtopics under prepare. Number 1, what are you willing to sacrifice? If your dreams are big, everybody's going to tell you you're crazy. So you're going to have to have mental toughness to go through this. And it's really going to be hard when things go wrong and it's bleak and it's, you've got a spouse that's nipping at you and, kids who are crying and, all of that stuff. So I really think it's important when you've made the decision that says, okay, I'm going to start my own business. One of the first things you have to ask yourself is, what are you going to sacrifice? What
Right.
are you going to give up?
Yeah.
Because it's painful. And you've got to be willing to give up what you've got to get what you want.
Right.
So that's number 1. Number 2 is get your finances straight. And you can go to my website and get those 2 services going on you so you can get started on that. But just basically lay the groundwork. Start now. Start early.
planbcapital.biz.
Yes.
Okay.
.biz.
Not
Pay your
biz.
parking tickets.
Yes.
The other thing about preparing is get some selling experience.
Ooh, selling. Yes.
Because
Selling is life.
you're gonna be selling and you're going, oh, I hate selling. Or if your idea of selling is wearing a loud a loud sport coat and slapping people on the back and calling everybody Bubba. I mean, that's not what selling is
Right.
all about. The most successful salespeople typically tend to be teachers because selling is telling. It's really
Yes.
people just want to know.
Right.
So my advice is go take a temporary job selling something, and my advice is go try to sell cars because they're always hiring. It doesn't require a 4-year degree, no experience. If you walk in and you say, hey, I think I want to try my hand at selling cars, if you can fog a mirror, they'll hire you. It's not difficult to get that. And
You're
you
right,
will
though.
learn.
Yeah, it's like intro to sales. I mean, really, right? And they
Yep.
have good training programs. And
I
you
was
get a
gonna
lot
say.
of chances to practice.
Yep.
Good deal.
Yep. Now you may not last. You may not like it, but you will get some training about what is a prospect, how do you deal with all of that. And, you know, it's the very, very basic fundamental stuff. And if you don't like cars, whatever you do for a hobby, so snow machines or, you know, skateboards or, you know, whatever, just figure out a way to get into the sales game. I sold vacuum cleaners door to door. Boy, you want to talk about brutal? And I only made it about a month. I did sell one vacuum cleaner.
Kirby or Rainbow?
Rainbow, how'd you know?
Yeah. I like those rainbow
I'm a
ones.
student.
Yeah.
I'm a student of sales, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
Kirby or rainbow.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think that's
It's
important.
good. Both of those are good machines.
They are good machines.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's important. That's a huge, huge skill. The better you get at it, the more money you will make.
Yeah.
And what I love about sales is it doesn't require a 4-year degree. You can get in there with a high school or a GED, or actually no high school. You know, so it's a very low entry bar to get into and start learning. And some of the wealthiest people I know are salespeople.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting.
You're constantly selling yourself.
You have
or
to
a
sell
product,
something.
right?
You have to sell yourself to buy something,
Yeah.
right? You have to have a good credit score and convince them that you'll pay it on time and that, you know, all this stuff, right? That's sales.
It's all persuasion.
Yeah. 100%.
We were all salesmen, you know, when we were 5 years old, trying to talk, you know, our parents out of a $5 bill so we could go, you know, do whatever. So
Or talk them into a piece of candy at the register.
yep,
Yeah.
You
yep,
know?
yep, that's right. My fourth one under prepare is learn the tax game.
Ooh, yes.
One of the
It's a big
earliest
one.
things I did was I took the H&R Block tax preparer course. Best thing I ever did. They will teach you in a matter of just my class was like 4 months long. I started in August and ended in December. I could do any kind of tax return. I could do corporate returns, farmer returns, but I sure got good at those business Schedule C returns. And there's so many nuances in the tax game that can save or cost you thousands of dollars if you don't know that
time.
they're there. So yeah, and I checked last night. You can actually, they do them online now. Mine was an in-person course, so you can actually go to H&R Block tax course and take an online course. The course is free, but the book costs $150. So, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, all right. But it's definitely worth it. And my motto from that is, it's not how much you make that matters. It's how much you get to keep. So
Correct.
definitely learn the tax game.
It's probably the best way to improve your margins is learn your tax.
Yeah, learn the tax game and have a really good CPA or tax preparer.
I'm going to get to that in a minute. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep, I'm going to get to that in a minute.
God dang you, Justin, you're jumping ahead.
So, and the fifth thing under the prepare is another book that rocked my world is called Profit First. And it's actually this guy down here.
We'll have to get one of those for the library. In there.
These
Yeah.
guys. This is just a stupendous book. It talks about the general accounting formula for accounting for your business is revenue minus expenses equals profit.
Yep.
You get what's left over. This author says that's backwards. Don't do that. He flips that formula around and he says, set up your business so that it's revenue minus profit equals expenses. So you're running your business off what's left after you've pulled your profit. And he's got formulas in there about how much profit that should be. When you start out, it should be 10%.
Right.
So if you get a $1,000, check from a client, how much money do you have to run your business on? You don't have $1,000.
Right.
You've got $900.
Right.
And that other 100 is a profit. So he's got a mechanism in there where you can be profitable from day one, even if you get $1 from a customer. So it's
interesting.
It's an awesome.
I'm gonna have to read that one.
Oh, it's spawned. Actually, I have many copies, so I came prepared to give you that for your library.
Oh
Thank you.
man, look at you, Karen.
It needs to go in your library. That
Okay.
book will rock your world.
Love
Get
it.
dibs on it first. Well, it's
Yep.
recommended.
Yep. So my second tip for young entrepreneurs is don't delegate. I know everybody says do what you do best and delegate all the rest. But when you're a new entrepreneur starting out, you're going to discover that there's two problems with that. Number one is it costs money,
It's true.
which you don't have. So
Yeah.
it'd be great, but how can you hire? You've got a bookkeeper, you got a lawyer, maybe a receptionist, a scheduler, a collection staff to follow up on your
Yeah.
slow pay. You've got all those things. You're going to have to do them. And that's actually a good thing because when we were talking before off camera, you can't really delegate. My philosophy is I can't delegate a task to some third person that I don't know how to do. Because number one, I can't tell if they're doing a good job.
Yeah, how do you
Right.
check their work? if
How do
know
you
what it's
know?
supposed to look
Yep.
like?
Or they could actually be ripping you off. I mean, the amount of embezzlement in this town is scary. So it's a matter of trust that you need to deal with. I was noticing, what was the name of the Sugar Babes? Not Linda.
Oh, I'm having to go back a ways. I'll come back to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, her dad was a CPA.
Right.
So if you've got that kind of resource, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But most of us don't. So you're going to have to do everything. And the other book that I brought is The E-Myth,
Okay.
which Linda from G Beta talked about in here. This book tells you how to set up all of those hats that you're going to have to wear. You've got a CEO hat, you've got a sales hat, you've got an operations hat. You've got the bank, the accounting, the payables hat, all that stuff. So that's an excellent book, E-Myth Revisited. And I think that's probably an older version. He may have revised it. But that's a definite read for how to actually structure your business and get a handle on what needs to be done.
So for those doers out there, get a plan.
Yeah, I mean, I've the education component of entrepreneurship and running a business is huge, right? You should constantly be learning because if you're not learning, then you become stagnant.
Zig Ziglar had a phrase. He said, "You're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotten."
Right. Exactly. And so, and that's one thing I've learned is like if you're not consistently growing, then you become stagnant, and then if you're stagnant, then you become obsolete. Right.
You get run over by the guys who are behind you, right behind you.
Yeah.
Things are changing.
So yeah, particularly now because things can change in the blink of an eye. So you're not going to be able to delegate. Sorry, it's just not going to happen.
Initially.
Initially, right,
Yes.
until you grow, yes.
Right.
But by then, you'll be able to
Not
tell
ever.
whether your bookkeeper
Right.
is doing correctly or you've got a
Right.
decent
Right.
lawyer or whatever the rest of it is. Number 3 is understand the difference between debt versus equity. So I've encountered a lot of people, a lot of businesses in this town where people will say, "Oh yeah, go see XYZ. He does, whatever funding." I'll go talk to that guy. In 30 seconds, it's like, "Oh, you're a venture capitalist, or you're an angel funder." So the problem with that is they're going to want a piece of your business. So
Correct.
they're going to want
They want equity in it.
they're going to want control, right? Another old time sales quote that has kind of guided my career is take in laundry before you take in a partner. Partners are a problem, big time. Nobody's vision is exactly the same as somebody else's. So it's find a way to not do that. So I would stay away from venture capitals. And if you want to do some homework on that, go watch the movie that came out about 10 years ago on Steve Jobs. It really chronicles very nicely how he built that up from nothing, very boldly, had to lie to get his first customers. He was selling computers that he actually didn't have.
Right.
He needed to use their money to buy the computer that they thought they were going to get.
Right.
So, I mean, some of it was shady, but again, that goes back to what's going to stop you? How hard are you going to press for this? Because the world's going to push back.
Right.
So, yeah, they most people know the story. that they forced him out of his own company, right? And promptly bankrupted the company because Jobs was Apple.
Was the company.
He
Yeah.
was it. And so they eventually hired him back, and he turned it around, and it's the Apple that we know today. But yes, so be very, very careful about people who want a chunk of your company, because you could end up on the street. The fourth one is don't fear your competition. I talk to a lot of starting entrepreneurs that, they look at their competitors and they say, he's charging $100, an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to charge 90 or 95, thinking that that's going to win the business. It doesn't.
Yeah, correct.
When I was database consulting, I was always the most expensive consultant in town. Always. I very rarely would I do competitive bids, but every once in a while I would fill out the forms and whatnot. I was always the most expensive one. And I got business because I did excellent work.
Right.
So don't be afraid of the competition.
People are going to pay for quality
Right. You don't have to discount
and for a
yourself.
known product.
That leads me to the 3 rules of business that I learned just as a young pup starting out. Number 1 is show up. Dan from Alaska Premier Auctions was telling about how when he hires, he sets an appointment for he sets 12 appointments, and he's lucky if 6 of them show up.
Sounds right. Yep.
So it's really important to show up. Whoever showed up that day had already beaten half of the competition for that job.
Yep.
So the second rule of business is show up on time. Back in my day, if you were late for a job interview, there's no way they would hire you. That was the kiss of death,
Right.
done deal. So, and the military kind of takes that one step further. In the military, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late.
No lie.
Yep.
You'd be 15 minutes early to the 15 minutes early.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why are we here? It's still
Yep.
dark.
Yep. Bring something to read or something that you need to do so
Right.
that the time is not downtime. But so you've got to show up, and you've got to show up early is what I would say. And the third thing is you've got to show up prepared.
Yep.
So if you do those 3 things, you're going to smoke your competitors. I don't care how many years in business they've been, how great their prices are, how huge their advertising campaign is. None of that's going to matter. There's a place for guys like you. I just came from the telecommunications environment in this state, and I've often said everybody in this town is running their businesses terribly. We all have horror stories of our providers or our cell providers or any of that stuff. The first guy that's going to come in here and not undercut pricing, first one that's going to be able to take a decent tech support call or a decent customer service experience is going to
Blow. Everybody's going to move over.
Yep. Everybody is going to leave them. And it can happen in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
We'll see if the Starlink phenomenon, because I just got my notification a couple of weeks ago that they had gotten to me in the waiting list, right? So we'll
I need
see.
to sign up for that
Yeah.
because, I'm over my service provider.
Well, we will see. It's not perfect, and it's
I
not
know.
cheap. Everybody thinks, Starlink's going to be cheaper. No, it's actually going to be a little bit more expensive.
Well, I mean, it's in the beta. It's in the initial phase. I would think it would be a little bit more expensive initially.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of technology rotating up there, so it took a lot of money. So don't be afraid of your competition. Just the 3 rules of business: show up early, and show up prepared. The other thing about here is the world of business isn't high school with a paycheck. The world of business is you've got to be professional. You're going to have to work with people you don't like. You're going to have to work with customers that you don't like. So you don't have the luxury to just blow somebody off because you don't like the,
Right. 100%.
whatever.
Yep.
So it's be prepared for that. And then my last one is always have a plan B.
Weird tie-in there, Karen. Did you mean to do that?
Well, one of my earliest programming customers when I was back in the tech world was he was a stockbroker, commodities broker. So I got to learn about pork bellies and the currency markets and all that crazy stuff. And he was running a portfolio. It was what we would call a hedge fund today. So it was private money invested with him, and he was just a one-man shop, making a ton of money. Life was good. He had a heart attack. Ended up in the hospital. Boom. There was no plan B. His wife panicked, sold everybody at where they were. It was huge loss. Everybody took a bath. Destroyed his business. So have a plan B. And I'm speaking to the entrepreneur. Right now, all you're doing is you're looking ahead, you're seeing the vision. But
you need to fall back.
Yeah, you need bench strength in case you can't work. Who's going to take over for you? And again, this is really hard in the beginning. So that's going back to your question about why do I think so many businesses fail? I have two answers for that. Number one, I think a lot of them fail for these very reasons. But the second thing is, I've had about 6 businesses up till now, I think I counted. And I guess it depends on your definition, you could call those failures. But they really weren't failures. They were seminars.
Yeah.
I went to a seminar. Some of them were painful, but I never made that mistake again.
That's the hard knocks life.
Yep.
Right?
College of Hard Knocks. So that's what it is. So even to those people who are listening to this and you're going to go out and you're going to fall flat on your face and you're going to lose money and you may go bankrupt, remember Walt Disney went bankrupt multiple times when he borrowed money, and he borrowed money from family that wouldn't even speak to him. So you've got to be prepared to, it's like, what's that child's toy when you hit it? It goes down, but it's weighted at the bottom, and it eventually comes back up.
Yeah.
So to my mind, there's really no such thing as a business failure. You're just learning for the next one. Well, I won't do that again.
It's a lesson.
Yep, I won't do that again. I won't take in a customer, or I won't take in a partner,
Right.
or debt versus equity.
Yeah.
Those kind of lessons. So you're really not a failure until you until you give up.
No, I get that for sure. Well, man, that was the most prepared 5-question thing we've had so far, and it was phenomenal.
Hey.
I'm definitely going to send this episode to a few different people who I think could use a little bit of planning.
Yep.
Well, we're so lucky to have platforms like this, right? And to have the access to people that we do.
There's a lot of skill and talent in this town, but we're really not terribly organized or talking to each other very well.
Yeah.
Not yet. That's the idea of this podcast. Get folks out and get some of this information out to people too, right?
Yep.
Identify some things.
Well, how can people find you? We got planbcapital.biz.
Planbcapital.biz. That's the my main way.
Okay.
I do have a Facebook presence, but I don't like Facebook. I'll just be honest, I don't like it. And I've got a LinkedIn presence that I'll probably be building more. Oh, and I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
So hopefully you'll let me put this recording on my YouTube channel.
Of course. Yeah.
And but definitely the website is the key way.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for imparting your years of knowledge to our listeners and myself. I really appreciate the book. That was so thoughtful. So
Yeah, maybe we can save someone from falling on their face. They can learn from your years of experience rather than trudging through the darkness.
I don't know. Well, there's value in falling. I mean, when I was trying to learn how to ski, I fell a lot.
Right.
it's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always good to take lessons of people before you, but sometimes some people have to take the lick on the chin before they ever learn. So
You're right. That was hot.
no, it's not. Okay, yes.
I told you to stay away from that cat, and you didn't.
Right. Yeah. But thanks for coming on. I mean, it was awesome. Thanks for giving us insight to your business and just how you even came to be. So
Yep.
appreciate it.
I give a lot of free advice, so give me a call.
Love it. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks.